Hey guys, Youngblood with you for your Should You Buy video on the Anvil Arrow, which is now up for sale, and not in a concept sale, now the ship is available for sale and flyable type of sale. The ship is available now, $65 war bond, $75 if you want to use store credit, and $80 war bond, and if you're not familiar, that's cash only, or just new money only, I should say, in a package to where you can actually get Star Citizen along with it. So $80 for the ship and Star Citizen. Keep in mind that means that you're not getting Squadron 42. That would be something you'd need to purchase later. But if you're looking for just having a secondary package and you like this ship anyways or plan on CCUing it to something else, I think it's a pretty good option. Even before we get too much further along in all of this, we're talking about a $65 ship if you want just the Warbond version. It's one of the cheaper LTI tokens that we've seen in a while, so if you've got your eyes set on something later in this sale that's going to be more expensive and you want to CCU your way up to it or something like that, you could potentially just end up getting this and going from there, or you could just save it for later when you decide what you want, but either way. It's a very small ship, 16 meters long, 12 meters wide, 4 meters tall. The closest is probably about the 125 in size, which is another very small ship. But it does come in much smaller than things like the Gladius and the Avenger and ships like that. As expected, it's a crew of one. As far as the speed and agility are concerned, they're both very impressive. You've got a top speed in SCM mode of 270 meters per second. Once you afterburn all the way up to your top speed, that ends up being 1,235 meters per second. And it gets up to that speed relatively fast. The afterburn isn't as fast as I expected it to be. It's better than a lot of other ships, but it wasn't like blown away. That being said, I think where the ship really kind of excels is in the agility. And then the other thing that I really like about this that, can kind of be a pain point for some people with Anvil ships is the visibility. This does have struts like you've seen on some of the other Anvil ships, but they are much more slender. They don't really seem to get in your way as much. And you got a lot of above you visibility. So especially if you're using something like a track IR or eventually some of the FOIP technology to do head tracking, you get a lot of vertical and kind of peripheral visibility, which is really nice. The weaponry on the ship is pretty good. You get two size 2 Scorpion Gatling guns. That's the nose gun that's on the Gladius. You also get two size 1 Bulldogs that are on a turret up top. I don't know if we're going to get the ability to swap that turret out for, like a size 2 or a size 3 later. But for right now, you're just basically running two size 2s and two size 1s. The missile complement on this is pretty impressive for a ship of this size. You get 3 size 2 Dominators, which are the electromagnetic missiles. And then you get 3 size 2 Ignite missiles, which are IR missiles, which I really like because you get a little bit of options there depending on what type of flare or countermeasure suite the other ship that you're attacking is actually using. And speaking of your countermeasures, you have a lot for a ship of this size. You have 20 chaff and 20 flares on board. As far as the components are concerned, it's got small everything, except you do get 2 small coolers. So basically it's 1 small everything except for coolers, and you get 2 small coolers. There's 2 small retro thrusters that are tucked into the shoulders. They're actually kind of these little strips, and you can kind of see them firing off in the video in the background. Really cool to see those in animation. You get 1 small main thruster, which seems to be kind of an overarching Anvil theme, at least with the Hornet line and some of the others. You get that 1 kind of circular engine in the back. And then you get 8 small maneuvering thrusters. Now, these are gimbaled maneuvering thrusters, and if you remember my conversation about these in a video a while back, gimbaled ones you actually get better fine control with, but you get less responsiveness than the fixed thrusters. And on a ship that really hails agility, I was expecting to see these being fixed thrusters. And the reason for that is because on a fixed thruster, it doesn't have to move in the direction and then fire off. It just shoots off. And that's probably why you see it having 8 of them. Now, in the documentation, it does say that it has some of the most advanced maneuvering thruster technology available today. Or the most advanced technology. So I don't know what that means and how that actually plays out in the game. But as far as the way the ship actually behaves, these 8 maneuvering thrusters, they do give you a lot of agility. You roll fast, you pitch fast. So the ship controls really, really well. It's fun to fly, and it's just been kind of, a pleasure to be in. So that's kind of your overview of the ship. But when we start talking about who's this ship right for, the price makes it a really attractive option for a lot of people, especially coming with the option to get the Persistent Universe in a package for $15 extra. Now, I think it's important to know that there is some very limited flexibility and roles that you can do with this ship. It was made to be a fighter, and it appears that it'll handle that pretty darn well. But outside of that use case, which does include things like escorting and mercenary work and that sort of thing, I could see this being a decent scout, a decent racer, or just even kind of as a distraction to allow other ships get away. Now, when we compare it to other combat ships in the price range, I think the loadout on the Gladius and Avenger are obviously a little bit more formidable, with the 325 bringing quite a bit more punch as well. But only really the Gladius in that line stands up to it from a flight perspective, and it probably even lags behind a little bit there too, partially due to its size. The Avenger and the 325A are both more sluggish, and this does come in at a lower cost than the Gladius, so it really is kind of a compelling option there. Now, some of it's also going to come down to just preference, and those that like the Tiger Strike Gatlings are going to really enjoy being able to bring along 2 of those on this ship, which is good because I typically find the Bulldogs that come stock on this to be very lacking in a lot of scenarios. I think depending on what power plant this actually has and how well it holds up, I'd probably swap out those Bulldogs for like size 1 neutron cannons or disruption weapons. I think those types of things would be smarter to kind of help get the shields down on your target while the ballistics are able to then tear through the other ship. Something I haven't really seen much detail on yet, though, is the stealth factor. Because while it doesn't say anything specific that I've seen in the documentation, on the Pledge store, it's listed as both military and stealth. Now, it may just be the fact that it's got a very small cross-section and the small components that kind of do the trick to lower the signature enough to be able to call it stealth. Or maybe it's the fact that half of your weapons are ballistics weapons, overall energy, which use less power, that help to give it that ability. I'm not really sure. But either way, it's a nice perk if that holds up. And the small cross-section on this ship is going to make it a real pain to deal with because it's not that much bigger than an M50 or a Razor, and we all know how hard those ships can be to hit when a good pilot is in the cockpit. So back to the original question here of who is this ship right for? I'd say specifically someone who's wanting an entry-level combat ship that outperforms for the price range. I'd say that for those that already have something like a Saber or something along those lines, a more capable and more expensive combat ship that still retains a good flight ability, it's a much different animal than something like a Super Hornet. I'd say this is probably a pass unless you just want something cheap that you can pull while you're waiting on timers. I do really like this ship specifically in the use case of joint operations, though, with larger ships that bring more of a punch or maybe doing more of the core defending, while using a few of these as interceptors or kind of dart in and out while others are doing more of the ongoing hammering. I think this ship would be fine in situations where you're alone if you know you're only going to chase down 1 to 2 small to maybe medium targets. But don't let the online documentation fool you. You're not going to be out for a long time against numerous targets and survive that long. It's just not set up to handle that. If it does have stealth ability, that means that armor is probably a part of that, which means it's probably less durable if it's standard armor. And one small power plant and small shield isn't going to last that long against incoming fire. My other beef with the standard Anvil approach to having one engine is that you don't really get a lot of redundancy there if you're taking damage on your engine. Most Aegis ships come with 2 engines, so if you lost one, you could still carry on, albeit at a less ability, but you can still move. That's always been a bugging point for me on these designs, and I think that's going to end up holding true here as well. Either way, it's a ship that's designed to be aggressive and to avoid taking hits, and with that goal in mind, I think it's a great option and they really nailed it. From the design perspective, I think it looks great. It's really cool. It folds up well. It's small. You can picture it in a carrier type scenario. So all in all, I dig it, and I recommend this ship, but for players without many other fighters and those who are don't plan on doing a lot of tasks outside of pure combat, but for players that want to get in and dogfight and maybe they don't want to jump in with a lot of dollars in this amount, I think it's a really, really great option. So that's the Anvil Arrow. If you guys have questions, please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, stay tuned for a lot more coming soon, including combat videos of this ship. It's going to be easy to do that now since we actually have the ship in game, so we can kind of do a little bit of a proficiency review later. But anyways, if you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, have yourselves a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.